Hello and welcome. Don Gordon gave the Old Fliers group a talk about when he was working as a volunteer at RAF Cosford Museum in the UK. He told us about some hazards of working with older aircraft.
In 2014, my wife and I moved to the UK. I was able to volunteer at the RAF Museum Cosford from late 2014 until mid-2017. A lot of these older aircraft are riddled with asbestos. And one example here is the P1A, as pictured. This was the first prototype of the English Electric Lightning Mark II interceptor. The second thing, radiation from instruments, because on a lot of the older aircraft, the faces of the instruments and the markings on those faces were painted in luminous paint that was actually radioactive. So, for example, with our de Havilland Comet, there was a prohibition on entering the cockpit because of the level of radiation, and even with the Hawker Hurricane you were limited to half an hour's work if you were working within 1 metre in any direction of the instrument panel for that reason.
Those older aircraft had instruments marked in radioluminescent paint containing radium-226. Radium was discovered in 1898 by Marie and Pierre Curie in ore obtained from a mine in the Czech Republic. Radium has a decay half-life of 1,600 years and is formed from the chain of decay products of naturally occurring thorium and uranium. Worldwide, total production of radium is just 100 grams. Mixing radium with a radioluminescent phosphor causes the paint to glow, and pilots could read the dials on the instruments in their dark cockpits. Phosphor molecules emit light when struck by radium's radiation. A century ago, watch dials that glowed in the dark were novel. Why then were these painted instruments so dangerous? It seems it wasn't the radiation that was dangerous, but the product of radium's decay. The gas radon is a byproduct of radium decay and causes cancers and cell mutations. Naturally occurring concentrations of radon are to be found in groundwater, caves, in some petroleum products, and in buildings, particularly basements. In less enlightened times, it was thought that radon-infused spa baths had health benefits. Drinks containing radon were even promoted for good health. One of the first factories to produce these glow-in-the-dark watches opened in New Jersey in 1916. It hired about 70 women, the first of thousands to be employed across the United States. It was a well-paid, glamorous job. For the delicate task of applying the paint to the dials, the women were instructed to point the brushes with their lips. The women were ingesting radium with nearly every brushstroke. They became known as the Radium Girls. When ingested, radium is particularly dangerous as it behaves like calcium and gets incorporated into bone. The major health risk of ingesting radium is radiation-induced bone necrosis and bone cancers. These take years to develop before symptoms are seen. The Radium Girls actually believed they were getting healthier by working with the new wonder drug, the most expensive substance in the world at the time, costing the equivalent of $2.2 million per gram in today's money. In the early 1920s, some of the Radium Girls started developing symptoms of fatigue and toothache. The first death occurred in 1922. It took another 2 years before the United States Radium Corporation commissioned an investigation. They examined the declining business rather than the health of the workers. Worker Grace Fryer filed her case in 1927 along with 4 other fellow workers, and this made front-page news around the world. This case, settled in the women's favour in 1928, became a milestone of occupational hazard law. The dangers of radium were now well known. The lip-pointing technique was discontinued and the workers were given protective gear. More women sued, and the radium companies appealed several times. In 1939, the Supreme Court in the US rejected the last appeal. The survivors received compensation and death certificates reported the correct cause of death. The Food and Drug Administration banned all deceptive packaging of radium-based products, effectively ceasing sales. Radium paint itself was eventually phased out and has not been used in watches and aircraft instruments since 1968. It's hard to calculate how many women suffered health problems due to the ingestion of radium, but it is thought to be in the thousands. Once the radium was inside the women's bodies, it could not be removed. Almost everything known about radiation in the human body is owed to the study of these poor unfortunate women. Luminescent paint applied today does not contain radium. Radium has been replaced by a radioactive isotope of hydrogen called tritium. Tritium emits electrons, not alpha particles that radium emits. Whilst tritium is still a radioactive source, it is considered an acceptable risk. Tritium-based paints are favoured by the military for applications where a power source may not be available, such as for instrument dials in aircraft and weapon sights. Thank you for watching.